Welcome back to the Peak Interviews channel. In this video, I'm going to discuss some strategies and techniques that are going to help you better manage the resignation process. I'm Dean Uncles, Managing Director of a successful executive search and coaching business. Over the past 25 years, I've appointed thousands of people from manager through to CEO. Today, I'm going to share with you my advice on how to make the resignation process run as smoothly as possible and take any stress out of the process as you transition into your next job. If you like the content of this video, I highly recommend you have a look at our counter-offer video. It's really the second part of our resignation process. After you've handed in your resignation letter, you may well receive a counter-offer. There's some fantastic tips and techniques in that video that are really going to help you walk through that process. My first tip is I always recommend that you have your employment offer, your letter of offer, your conditions of employment signed and in writing. Make sure the details of that contract are in order. They're as per the negotiation, salary, the start date, any other entitlements are as per agreed. And if there's any clarification that you require in the contract, or there's anything that's omitted or it's inconsistent with the negotiation, certainly go back to the employer, to the hiring manager, to HR to have those details confirmed. So you want the letter of offer, the letter of employment signed and in writing. So you've got your employment letter in writing. You're now going to go through the resignation process. The most professional process is always to resign in person wherever possible. Tip number 3, remain professional, remain composed and remain calm. You want to keep your emotions in check, even if the other person may have a negative reaction or might get a little bit emotive in the conversation. You want to remain balanced. Hopefully the conversation is calm and professional. If it does get heated, make sure you remain your composure. You want to maintain your relationships with the people that you work with. Potentially these people might be referees in the future. So make sure you focus on yourself and your control. If others overreact, that's something that's outside of your control. You just make sure you're professional and you're composed. My next tip, make sure you prepare a formal written resignation letter. That can come in 2 forms, hard form copy or an email. Make sure they're both prepared. It doesn't have to be long. You want to give some points in terms of your intent to resign, when your last day will be. You be complimentary to the organisation, but keep it short and sweet. Don't go into huge detail to write a full page or a 2-page enormous resignation letter of all the things that you've done and everything that your job's meant to you. At that point in time, the person that you're handing that to, whether that's HR or your hiring manager, the message in that is not likely to have a strong impact on at that point in time, because they're probably more focused on the fact that you've just resigned rather than the detail that you put into your letter. So my advice would be keep it short and sweet. When you have the verbal conversation or you hand in your resignation letter, potentially you may have a response or may have heard a response to say, I'm not accepting that, I can't accept that. Keep in mind, in most organizations around the world, the employer legally has to accept your right to resign, assuming you're resigning within the context of your contract and you're offering sufficient notice. So whilst they may say, I'm not accepting that, if you've dated your letter on a particular date, it's on file, it's your decision to resign. They may ask you for some time to reflect on your decision. They may ask for some time because they want to come back with a potential counteroffer and look at ways that they can keep you, but they can't not accept your resignation letter. So keep that in mind if you get that kind of a response. Make sure you check your employment conditions in regards to how much notice you're required to give. My advice is always to give the notice that's as required per the contract. In some instances, you might try and negotiate that down if you have an extended period of notice. Probably the most common is 4 weeks. In some organisations, it's up to 12 weeks, and for some senior roles, if you're in a CEO role, potentially it's 4 or 6 months. If it's an extended notice period, if it's a 6-month or a 3-month notice period, potentially you might negotiate that shorter. The place that you're going to will want you to start sooner, and it might suit the organisation in terms of the transition of new leadership to have you hand over the role as soon as possible and then exit yourself from the organisation rather than serving out your notice period. So that might be a point for discussion. So notice period is an interesting point of debate. On one hand, you may feel obligated to continue to work at your current employer. You might want to finish off a project, it might be a key deadline. You may know that there's no one to take over from your role. There might be someone else that's about to go on leave. So giving them 4 weeks notice potentially puts them in in a challenging situation because they may not be able to replace you, within that 4-week period. So in that scenario, sometimes there's a sense of accountability, potentially a little bit of guilt for you to stay longer, and potentially your manager might ask you to do that. They might say, well, your notice is 4 weeks, but we'd really appreciate it if you could stay 8 weeks or 10 weeks because we need to backfill your role. Now there's an aspect of that sense of loyalty and that commitment, which is honourable, but you've got to keep in mind that you've just accepted a job with another employer. They equally need you. They have just hired you to do a job for them. So any time that you give to your current role is time that you're taking off your future employer. And whilst up until this point, you've shown loyalty and commitment to your current employer, at some point you need to transfer that loyalty and that commitment and that dedication to do a job across to your new employer, because they're the one that you will be working for, in 4 weeks' time. And they're not going to appreciate you coming back saying, I have to give 4 weeks notice in my contract, but I want to stay 8 weeks because I want to help them. They're likely to say, well, we need you to help us. We want you to give you 4 weeks notice in your contract, but we need to get you on board, started with us as soon as possible, because we equally have deadlines and projects to be delivered. The team needs leadership, and they'll want you into the role. So it's a point of debate, but my advice is give the contracted amount of notice. As I said, that is likely to be 4 weeks. And you don't need to give any more than that. You need to shift your mindset to say, I'm going to a new job. They need me to get started. I want to start that opportunity. The transition time that you have between jobs. So it's not necessarily the best thing for your health and well-being, your energy, to finish working at one employer on a Friday and start a brand new employer on a Monday. So if you have 4 weeks notice and zero transition time to yourself, that's the scenario you're going to face yourself in, and say you'll finish one job on Friday, as of Monday you work for a new employer in a new environment, and you've got the weekend to recalibrate and reset. My advice in that scenario is try and always, if possible, do a 4+1 or potentially a 4+2. So what I mean by that is you give 4 weeks notice and then you have 1 week to yourself in between transitioning jobs. Now that 1 week could be a great opportunity for yourself, friends or family, take a holiday. It could be sitting at home, doing some gardening, sitting by the pool, doing absolutely nothing, just resetting the batteries. But keeping in mind that you want to go to your new job fully refreshed, fully energized, and have left all of the mental and emotional, sort of build up from your previous job. You want to be able to leave that behind and reset. If you've been working in that organization for a long time, there's a lot of things that you've got going on in your mind, so you need some space and time to do that reset. Potentially, if you've been in a really, really busy job and you haven't had an extended period of holiday for a long time, maybe you've been working on a key project, you might want 2 weeks transition time. Now, your new employer might say, look, we really don't want you to, wait 2 weeks. We really need you in here, but they need to be somewhat accommodating, like giving you at least a week between jobs. They will get a better performance from you early because you come in energized and refreshed, as opposed to starting on Monday and already feeling burnt out. The other component to that is you're just about to start a new job. Absolutely, you'll have annual leave that you'll accrue, and there'll be holidays that you can take. But early on, you're trying to make a great impression. You're trying to build your knowledge. You're trying to build relationships with stakeholders. You want to show them that they've made a good decision, the hiring decision. So it's not likely when you first join you're going to take a holiday. So you want to keep that in mind too. Is if you have no break between transitioning jobs, you're about to go into a new job, and in that scenario, if you're run down, tired, burnt out on day one, and you're going into a brand new job where you might say, I might not take my first series of holidays for 6 or 9 months, or potentially the end of the first year of my employment. I might take my holiday. So you've got to go and recharge, refreshed, take that opportunity. As I said, my advice is a 4+1 or a 4+2, but you just need to take your own sort of a judgment on that in terms of what makes sense and the context of you transitioning out of one role and transitioning into another role. But definitely something to think about, give consideration for, and find out what's the right fit for yourself. So you've determined the notice period that you require. As I said, you might be telling your current employer it's 4 weeks, and you're telling your new employer that you're starting in 5 weeks because you've got a week holiday between changing jobs. You need to consider the communication plan. So who is going to tell your team that you're resigning? Who are going to tell your customers, your stakeholders, your peers? Depending on the level of role that you're at, the communication strategy needs to be considerate of the employee you're going to. So they want to make your announcement to their business and their team. And so if those announcements are things that are going to go out into social media, potentially if you're in a senior job, CEO role or another specialist role, your transition and your announcement might get picked up by mainstream media. So you need to make sure that communication plan and the timing of that plan is consistent. As I said, if you're in a senior role at that level, you're probably most likely talking to your media and communications team, but you want to make sure those teams are talking to each other, the messages are consistent, they're going out at the same time. If you have to resign to the board or other key stakeholders, you need to have a bit of a plan of attack of when they meet, making sure the message doesn't get leaked out to anyone else along the way, so you can control that comm strategy. You want to offer your support to the transition process. So you've handed in the resignation, your direct manager has accepted that, and now you're starting to talk about your transition out. So who's going to do your job? Is there someone within your team that can step up? Do they need to go to the market to look for a replacement? So definitely offering all your support to help them in that process. Ultimately, you're going to come to a point that you may exit the organisation before they found a replacement for you. They will manage that process. You shouldn't feel fully responsible for that. You just want to offer the support that they may need. They may choose not to accept it. They may choose to run the entire process independently without your contribution. That's fine. The fact that you've offered the support, it really is the first step. Similarly, in offering support for the transition to the new person, make sure that your handover is professional and clean. So any of the work that you're doing in terms of file management, documentation, project management is in order. So your manager has a really clear snapshot of where the team's at, any key initiatives are running, any key challenges, and what might need to get done before you finish your notice period and transition out. But equally, what are the things that are going to continue on once you depart and your replacement steps in, and you're going to need to look at some of those issues. So having a really clear project plan or team plan and being able to articulate that to your manager will be critical. Remember to exit gracefully and professionally. So the conversations that you're having with your team, your peers, your managers, any other stakeholders or customers, that maintains a high level of professionalism, that you're not saying anything negative about the organisation. If you do have some reasons as to why you're leaving, keep those to yourself. Try not to promote or brag about the opportunity that you're going to. Remember, the conversations that you're having with other people, they still work in the organisation. So whilst it may make you feel good, sort of bragging a little bit about the fantastic promotion or salary rise or the organisation that you're going to, that's not likely to have a positive impact on those around you that are working in the organisation that you're about to leave. So just keeping those conversations really compartmentalised. You don't need to share all of your reasons for leaving. Keep that narrative really positive, but really short and succinct, so you go out with a level of grace and a level of professionalism. So my final point in the process, hopefully your resignation process and your transition has gone well and it's gone smoothly. However, sometimes you need to hope for the best, but plan and prepare for the worst. What I mean by that is some organisations may have a policy that if you are exiting for certain reasons or going to an organisation that is a direct competitor, their policy may be to put you on gardening leave and have you exit your role and exit the organisation immediately. That should be in some ways obvious to you. If you worked in the organisation for long enough, you would have seen how other people have exited when they've resigned, and if they've gone to a competitor, you hopefully would have seen how that process is run. So if someone has been put on gardening leave, effectively, walked out of the building on the day of the resignation, that's probably likely the experience that you're going to get. It can be really disorientating for people because you feel up until that point that you're trusted, you're loyal, you've got colleagues and friends in the organisation, but if the policy is hand across your security access, pack up your personal belongings, and you need to leave the organisation, that can be incredibly uncomfortable for people. So just prepare for that. So hopefully you found some of the strategies and advice helpful. The resignation process can be stressful. However, if you've got a bit of a plan of attack, write down some of the things we talked about today. Make sure you're ticking those off. get the letter of offer in writing, make sure you resign and you've got your notice period all confirmed. You manage a communication strategy, maintain a really positive disposition, maintain your integrity, be calm, really maintain those relationships, because you want those people to maintain professional and potentially personal relationships. Some of those people you might want to be references. Some people that work for you now may want to come and work for you in the future. So you want to exit gracefully, maintain a really strong personal brand, and try and make the transition as enjoyable as possible, so you can focus on the next opportunity that you've got to go to. If you found this content helpful, please have a look at our other videos. Greatly appreciate it if you would like. Be absolutely fantastic if you would subscribe to the channel. Until next time, hopefully these tips help. Good luck with the transition process for your next job.